So in your new book, Tribes, you discuss both the positive effect that large social groups can have on various social issues, also how detrimental labelling of particular groups can be. Is this something that you've experienced firsthand?
Well, it's definitely something I've experienced firsthand, and you kind of just have to look at my Twitter feeds and look at some of the comments to see that. And it started to surprise me, really, that in expressing views about Brexit, about the Windrush generation and how they've been treated by the government, about the people that died in Grenfell Tower, some people saw that as me representing only a small group of people. So I had tweets like, "Why do you hate the English so much?" Like, we're talking about I am English, I don't hate the English. I love the English, that's why I'm in the business of being in politics, because I want to make the country I live in better, and because I have an opinion, and yes, it's a representative opinion on behalf of the people I represent and people who identify with me in politics. But I guess we are living in an age where people are retreating into these tribal groups, and that's what I explore in my book. We're going back to a sort of them and us after a period where I think we were much more willing to get along and rub along with people who had different interests, different backgrounds, different views to ourselves.
Coming back to what you said about kind of receiving a lot of negativity through social media, so younger politicians like yourself use social media a lot more frequently, and you tend to have a larger social media presence, which can cause a lot of negativity. So how do you deal with that, and do you think that would put people off from like becoming politicians and entering public office?
Well, politics at the moment can feel very, very personal, very, very nasty. I think very sadly, in the wake of the murder of Joe Cox, particularly, of course, I mean, I think there must be loads of people, particularly women actually, because often the bullies pick on women particularly, are put off by politics. My mother used to say to me, live up to your ancestors' prayers. And what she meant by that was that my ancestors, I think in her mind she was thinking of back in the Caribbean, they would have been enslaved people, and they would have prayed one day that one of their great-great-great-grandchildren could be as free as I am today. So I approach public life with quite a tough attitude, grateful for what I have in life. I'm very, very fortunate to have an education, to have resources, and I see my job as using my platform as powerfully as I can to speak truth on behalf of the people that I represent. And I'm quite uncompromising about that. And social media is part of the way in which I just put opinion out there, and it travels and it reaches lots of people. And yes, I get abuse as a consequence of that, but I'm pretty hard-nosed about it. I understand that obviously quite a lot of people wouldn't want to do what I do, but frankly, being in politics at the moment is like drinking from a hose pipe. I'm never bored. No day is the same, and I'm hugely personally fulfilled.
What drives your work increasing social mobility and higher education accessibility within British society, particularly in working class communities?
I'm driven by the fact that I was born poor, working class and black in North London in the 70s, and largely raised by a single mother. And there's a powerful sense in which I'm like, how the hell am I here? Doing what I'm doing. And a knowledge and a truth that some of the young people that I went to school with have struggled with mental health and anxiety, have spent time in prison, and certainly have not been as economically successful or free as I am. And I'm here because of wonderful teachers, mentors, a fantastic, formidable mother, and actually different aspects of policy at the time. And so for me, it's about really shining a light on those who still today in 2019 don't have those opportunities. So when I raise issues of who gets to go to Cambridge and Oxford despite ability, and why whole swathes of the north of England doesn't make it to those institutions, or Wales, or indeed black young people from a constituency like mine, despite being bright, it's because it's not fair that all of us pay our taxes to those institutions, but basically it's a kind of shoring up of the upper middle class in this country. When I raise issues like the people that died in Grenfell Tower, which included a friend of mine, it's about that was a fire that should never have happened, and frankly the corporate responsibility that led to those deaths. And the Windrush generation, of course, are my parents, if you like, my parents' generation, and the huge sacrifice they made for this country. And then there are sort of proxy issues that come out of where we are at the moment, and we're in a period where there is a nasty rise in the hard and far right particularly, and indeed the hard and far left, that's polarising our politics, and it's important to kind of speak to those issues.
So what do you think of the surge in youth activism at the moment, particularly surrounding issues like Brexit?
I think that's fantastic, absolutely fantastic, because when I came into politics, which is now almost 20 years ago, the word was apathy. No one cared. It was just completely different. There was a large consensus in British political life. Some people would say you could throw a dime between Tony Blair and David Cameron. I'm not entirely sure about that, but there was a broad consensus and there was quite a lot of apathy. The economy was working and booming. There were issues, but they did not seem as profound as they do today. Flash forward to now, and you look at climate change and young people's animation and marches and protest, Trump and young people's commitment to standing against some of what he's had to say. Issues of vulnerability, particularly around areas like sexuality or mental health, and the focus that young people are putting on those sorts of issues. I think it's really exciting. I'm really animated. And I've got to say I'm really hopeful, because even though the world is in a pretty crap place at the moment, some of that's to do with the fact that the baby boomers who were running the world for so much of the 80s, 90s are still around. They're still controlling everything. But at some point they will get off the perch, and I'm quite fired up by the millennials, who will eventually get the levers of power, and I think we'll all benefit as a consequence of that.
So do you think currently that young people have a legitimate voice in Orthodox politics?
Of course they have a legitimate voice, they have an important voice, but they have a voice that's often denied. Power is with those who have assets, who bought their houses when they were cheap and have made a fortune. Power is with those who have big fat pensions as a consequence of immigrants working and contributing to our economy and helping them have big fat pensions, and having had free education, which young people are now denied. And so unfortunately we still have a political system across much of the developed world, and certainly in the UK, that benefits those who are of a certain age, over 50 and beyond, and locks those individuals into power. And young people are struggling to break that open, but are very, very vocal about the need to break that open, and my view should remain very, very vocal and very, very organised. And that's what I'm loving, because it's organised. It's not just individuals. It's young people grouping together and shining a light on power.
Your commitment to social justice has definitely surpassed most people's personal limits. Do you believe that politicians can still bring about positive change, or do you ever wonder if you could have made more of an impact if you'd remained as a barrister?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I love the law. I loved representing people. I loved being in court. I quite like the fancy dress of a wig and a gown as well, to be honest. And sometimes I think, God, I'd love to be doing a trial now and, you know, standing up for the voiceless, definitely. But I think that in the end, what I love about what I do is its variety. I'm here at the Hay Festival because I've written my second book, and to talk about that book. I am able to be engaged in public life in the issues that I care about. I get amazing invitations across the country and across the world to support different groups. And it could be very far-flung, like supporting the case for Aboriginal rights in Australia. You know, they've watched what I'm doing in the UK and they want me to come and talk about it, or to the issues that I've raised about our criminal justice system in America, or in this country, speaking to working class communities that are not diverse like my seat in Tottenham, but have real issues. So I feel very rewarded by what I do, despite a little feeling that wouldn't it be nice still to be a lawyer. But I am using my voice and using the skills of advocacy that I learned as a young barrister.
Okay, and finally, coming from a working class ethnic minority background, what barriers did you face entering public office, and what advice would you give to young people facing those similar barriers who want to follow a similar career path to yours?
Do you know what? I think one of the biggest barriers is confidence. It's imposter syndrome. I remember getting into the House of Commons and thinking, what the hell am I doing here? I'd never been there before. And it took me quite a few years to feel that I belong there. I had no one in my family that really understood what it was to put a suit on and go to work every day. How to use money and spend money wisely took me a little while. So I think, you know, working class communities, you know, whatever their colour, struggle with these issues. What I found, though, were there were lots of wonderful people that were determined to help me do well. And I lent into those teachers, professors, youth workers, older friends that wanted to sort of mentor and advise and guide me. I didn't let my pride get in the way of that. So I think my biggest advice is remembering that wherever you are, there will always be adults who might not look like you, might not sound like you, but want to see you succeed if you're prepared to grab what's in their brains for free. You know, that doesn't cost anything. Just take it all and deploy it.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.